Perhaps the weirdest act of all time, the Onions Future Act of 1958, which is still in force today, is a US regulation that banned futures trading on onions. But to understand why this happened, we gotta go back to the very beginning. And before we dive in, please consider subscribing, it would really help out the channel a lot. Now, let's get straight into it. It all began in the mid-1940s when onions future trading emerged on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, aiming to fill the void left by the cessation of butter futures contracts. Now, why anyone would want to trade futures on onions and butter is beyond me. But fast forward to the mid-1950s, and onion futures rose in popularity, comprising a whopping 20% of all trades on that exchange. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the futures market, it's basically betting on whether the price of something will rise or fall in the future. Think of it as predicting the stock market, but just with onions. Now, the fall of 1955 was what really shook the market. Two traders, Sam Siegel and Vincent Kosuka, created the perfect scheme. They accumulated a staggering 98% of onions in Chicago, along with onion futures contracts. Later that year, they had stored over 30 million pounds of onions, after which they began to convince onion growers to purchase their inventory and threatened to flood the market with millions of onions if they didn't. Then, Siegel and Kosuga began buying short positions on a large amount of onion contracts, which essentially means they could earn money from the futures market if the price of onions fell, which it did. By March 1956, these two traders had driven down the price of 50 pounds of onions down from the $2.75 a bag to just 10 cents a bag, a staggering 96% reduction in the price. The prices of onions were so low at that time that these onions were selling for less than the bags that initially held them, and Siegel and Kosuga made millions from their short positions. Their actions eventually resulted in the bankruptcy of many onion farmers, which later led to swift regulatory action. Enter the Onions Future Act, championed by then Congressman Gerald Ford and signed into law by President Dwight D. Eisenhower in August of 1958. This landmark legislation excluded onions from the definition of commodities, effectively banning futures trading on them entirely. But you might ask, what were the repercussions? Well, for starters, it dealt a severe blow to the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, which had to pivot its trading strategy to survive. However, out of this disaster emerged new opportunities, with future contracts on pork bellies and frozen concentrate orange juice gaining traction, eventually restoring the Chicago Mercantile Exchange's popularity. And once again, I have no idea why anyone would want to trade pork belly and frozen concentrate orange juice, but here we are. And today, the Onion Futures Act still stands. And while it may seem like a quirky footnote in financial history, it has definitely made an impact on futures trading and market regulation. And yeah, I didn't believe this was a real thing when I first heard it either.